Bioshock is, to me, the next generation of emergent action horror RPG. Taking sort of the design concepts we came up with for System Shock 2 and bringing it to the next generation. The focus is on, instead of creating a complex RPG with lots of little screens and lots of little stats, create a lot of interactive, emergent simulational systems that all work together and simulate a world really to a depth that nobody's ever done, and create a world that's consistent, a world that's that feels united, and that all the game systems play off one another in a combinatorial sense to make it a completely new experience. The primary way it ties into System Shock 2 is the design mechanics, and essentially it's the same development team doing it. We, in the same way that System Shock 2 didn't start out as System Shock 2, it started out as a design document. Bioshock starts out with a lot of designs that's inherent to our principles about gameplay and about horror, about gameplay, about simulation. It's not the same piece of intellectual property, but from a game design perspective, it's heavily inspired by what we started there and what we intend to. A gauntlet that hasn't really fully been picked up, and what we intend to pick up and continue on with that. I'm not interested in making a System Shock action shooter. I'm interested in the design principles of what made System Shock 2 great and what makes Irrational games unique, and really exploring on that, unbound by a particular publisher or a particular franchise or any particular thing. It gives us freedom to do exactly what we want to do. In the same when we were designing System Shock 2, it's rather different as a game design from System Shock 1. We weren't bound by anything from System Shock 1 there either. And this is going to be another development on top of it. Though I guarantee fans who liked System Shock 2 will like Bioshock. Well, the inspiration from this game, I think actually a core piece of inspiration came from the movie The Fly. There was a movie in the 80s with Jeff Goldblum called The Fly. And what that movie is about, it's about when does a person stop being a person and become a monster. And the scary parts of the movie are not the end where he became a big insect, but during the middle, when you saw this great guy start to fall apart, and not just physically and psychologically fall apart. And that's always been an inspiration for this product, and how we think about, what happens when people start altering themselves biologically? What happens when they improve themselves biologically? When do they stop being a human, and what does that mean to people? And that sort of tension of humanity, and where it starts and where it ends, is a driving force behind not just the gameplay, but the story and the mood of Bioshock. And we dealt with similar themes in System Shock when it came to technology and to people, cybernetic implants and things like that. What's interesting about Bioshock is that it's a little closer to what we're doing now when you start getting into issues like, whether it's stem cell research or human cloning, and the conflicts that naturally arise from that, because it asks a lot of questions. Sure, there are ways to get better. Should we be better? Should we be better? What happens when you get better? Are you just better, or do other things change? You can't. There's no free lunch, and that's a lot of the issues that they explored in that movie. And I saw that movie when I was much younger, and it still stuck with me, not because of the monster suit, but because of the ideas. In Bioshock, weapons are not, in the same way your body is not like in most shooters, a single thing with a certain amount of hit points and a certain amount of speed, a certain amount of abilities. As your body is modifiable, your weapons are modifiable. Weapons and those modifications affect different monster types, affect different how you use them and how you're modified, and even to go as far as the environments are modifiable. And I'm talking about changing things in the environment that radically, not just change a graphical change like you see in most weather effects, but changing aspects of the very air you breathe, the very moisture in the air around you, the very temperature around you, to change how everything acts, how the monsters act, how your weapons act, how you act in those environments, and your ability to control those things. So you have the ability to change your weapons, change your environment, change the ecosystem of what's going on in the world, and change your very body. And that's what Bioshock's about. In the same way, the themes we're dealing with are about change and what that means. The game is about change. It's about changing, giving the gamer game end parameters to change everything in the game and make his experience totally unique from one game to another. Well, the nice thing about Irrational, as we've grown a little bit, is it's given us some breathing time. Instead of having to rush things out and make determinations very quickly and set up publishing deals, we've been playing with Bioshock for around 3 years now, playing with the ideas, and it's evolved over time. And we've brought it to a rough prototype stage we weren't happy with, got rid of it, started again. Had a design document, weren't happy with it, got rid of it, started again. And we've been constantly playing with it. We're now getting to a place where we're very confident with the design, and we're starting to talk to the publishing community about it. It's rather evolved, like the game itself. It's evolved in the process, and I think what a lot of it is that because almost everybody who did System Shock 2 is still at Irrational. Nobody was ever, if we're going to do another game in that genre, I think we have to do something different, and we have to not take things away, but grow the genre and make the genre, I think, be able to claim the throne that genre should have had. The deep, emergent, first-person game, which has sort of been sadly abandoned, to make it not only accessible but deeper than it's ever been. And that's a challenge, and that's why it's taken a long time. But I think clearly we're the ones to do it. The team is almost entirely intact from System Shock 2, and they can't wait. Every conversation we have, they just get more and more excited.